Good morning and welcome to Plato's Cave on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on FoxLips.com. It's home to fresh, relatively uncensored ideas and conversations in the chat room and a place to get your merch. The station is not beholden to anyone, but does require your support. Please donate or subscribe or buy some of that awesome merch. Buy that merch. Catch the cave. This is the cave. On air, online on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop radio. This is show number 12. Show number 12. It is show number 12 because I'll tell you why. It should be show number 13, but it ain't. Hey, I've got an idea. Why not join the club and subscribe to the archive? Well, actually, you don't have to subscribe to the archives, but you could become a donor. A constant giver to the station. The archives themselves are free, and you can access them via the station's webpage, revolution.radio, and you can check out all the hosts' shows. It's really worthwhile, really good. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I broadcast in Australia, and for me, that's the Rug people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. Thank you very much. Now, why is this show number 12 and not show number 13? Because last Thursday, God, time flies, my Skype didn't work for 18 hours. I tried it on every different machine, so I thought maybe machine, because I have an Apple. I'm running this on an Apple right now. Okay, so I thought I'd fair enough Apple, right? So I go into my laptop, which is a Microsoft machine, not phone, not. It's complete denial. So I do apologize for not being here to entertain and elucidate you. I'm sure the hour was filled just fine without me being here. It used to happen quite frequently, shiny side out. Either we couldn't dial in at all, or the interference was so severe. The lag was so severe that the show was completely impossible to listen to. It's always specific topics that attracted that kind of attention. Obvious ones, I guess, if you think about it for a second. But we were talking about the nature of reality, the reality of reality. How real is reality, right? We discussed quantum physics and, holographic universe theories, all of those wonderful things. And we also asked the question, what makes you you? What makes you you? At what point do you stop being you? And it's not an easy question to answer, to be honest, right? Because like we discussed, we will chop off all manner of body parts. I don't recommend that you do that. And we're still ourselves. You can even reduce it down to the brain, and it's still ourselves. And then what if we could somehow create a perfect copy of the field of our brains, all the connections, all the neurons, and all the electricity, etc. Is it still us then if we make a perfect copy and store it somewhere digitally? Is it? Or is it not? That's the question, right? What makes us us, and how deep does our individuality, our identity really go? It's a really hard question to answer. It really is. If you spend some time about it, thinking about it is, see what your answer is. See what you come up with. What defines you? What makes you you? Or are you just a passenger? Are you just a tourist in this life? I don't know. We did talk about the holonomic brain theory. So there's a couple of guys here. There's Karl Pribram, who's a psychiatrist, and David Bohm, who was a physicist. So they both sort of collaborated, I guess, eventually on this theory. And Karl Pribram looked at the brain and thought, well, how do you explain the brain? How do you explain everything that happens in the brain? How do you explain how thoughts are formed, where they come from, the activity in the brain, etc. It's really, really hard to make sense of it. Anyway, they did collaborate, and the holonomic brain theory was originated by the psychologist Karl Pribram and initially developed in collaboration with physicist David Bohm. And it's a model for human cognition, human thinking, brain activity, etc., that posits cognitive function is as being guided by a matrix of neurological wave interference patterns situated temporarily between holographic gestalt perception and discrete effective quantum vectors derived from reward anticipation potentials. It's a mouthful, right? What it means is that our brain is a holographic construct that functions in a quantum-like state. Okay, essentially oscillating, between probabilities until they collapse each nanosecond into our reality. Right? It's a field of possibilities. Good morning, Comet. Good morning, Memes. Good morning, Jerbear. A lot of stuff happening in the chat. Well, not that much, but there's a few people in there. Okay. Pribram was originally struck by the similarity of the hologram idea and Bohm's idea of the implicate order in physics, and contacted him for collaboration. In particular, the fact that information about an image point is distributed throughout the hologram. So if you got a hologram, right, and you break it, and it's usually a plate of glass, it's a hologram. So if you break that plate of glass, you find that each fragment of the original hologram still carries the total information. Okay, so it's not like breaking a picture or cutting a picture or whatever it might be, where you get fragments of the whole in each tiny shard. No, each tiny shard keeps the totality of the information of the hologram. So each tiny shard is the total hologram in and of its own. So the an image point is distributed throughout the entire hologram, right? So that each piece of the hologram contains some information about the entire image. Okay, and that seemed suggestive to Pribram about how the brain could encode memories. And the Cave, hey Comet, the Cave is a show that I've conceived of, and Dave joins me when he can. Thus far, we have not been able to catch up on the Cave, in the Cave. But the Shiny Side Out on Sunday is still alive and well. We just completed show number 500, as you might know. So yeah, if you want to catch us on Sunday or Saturday night for you guys, Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon for Australia, well, evening now. It's between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on a Sunday. Yeah, but this is Mackie's brainchild. So he looked at the brain and how it encodes information, specifically memory. And it turned out, like I said last time, that it doesn't seem to live in a specific place. Memory seems distributed around the entire brain. Pribram was encouraged in this line of speculation by the fact that de Valois had found that the spatial frequency encoding displayed by cells of the visual cortex was best described as a Fourier transform of the input pattern. Okay, this holographic idea led to the coining of the term holonomic to describe the idea wider contexts than just holograms. The holonomic brain theory describes a type of cognitive functioning based on Fourier transformations which convert space-time coordinate systems, like the x, y, and z, into spectral coordinate systems, each point represented as a fractal. The term holonomy was first used to express a specific coordinate system along generally applicable guidelines. Holonomic processing has recently been labeled quantum holography. In its application to image processing in tomography, as in PET scans and fMRI imaging. It is also used for processing images in digital cameras. Dennis Gabor in 1947 discovered optical holography when he demonstrated that the information pattern of a three-dimensional object can be encoded in a beam of light, which is more or less two-dimensional. The subsequent discovery of the laser beam added credence to his theory. Karl Pribram, who fashioned the holonomic brain model of cognitive function in 1987 in collaboration with David Bohm, conjectured that the reason subatomic particles are entangled is because at a deeper level of reality, these particles are not individual but actually extensions or emanations of the same wave forms. So it's a really interesting example of how we need to look at that. It's really, really cool. Think of a fish tank. Okay, and in that fish tank is a fish, just the one fish. And you put a camera in the front of the fish tank. You put a camera on the side of the fish tank. You could even put a camera on the top of the fish tank if you wanted to. But each camera, right, and you don't know that these cameras are pointed at the same fish, but each camera shows a different aspect of the fish. You know, the face of the fish, the front of the fish, right, the side of the fish, the top of the fish, maybe the back of the fish, wherever you point your camera. It is just the one fish, though. However, if you do something and make the fish move in one camera, you know, whatever, you also observe that the fishes or the fish in each of the other monitors, you know, that monitor your cameras, are also moving at the same time, exactly at the same time, right? So it's not that you're looking at, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different fish. You're looking at the same fish from different vantage points, and any change in the fish, in any of the fish, you know, behaviors will be reflected on all of the monitors at the same time, right? And that's sort of how some quantum physicists think reality might actually work. We're not looking at different things. We're just looking at the same thing from different vantage points. It's a bit of a stretch. Try to bear with me though, okay? So it's really interesting. It's a very interesting way of illustrating it. Now, scientists in the early 20th century experimented with electrons and discovered the dual nature of these fundamental particles of matter, namely that electrons, like other quantum particles, are only perceived as individual units when they're in actuality waveforms existing in multiple spots simultaneously. An analogy of the holonomic brain theory is the way sunlight illuminates objects in the visual field of an observer. It matters not how narrow the beam of sunlight is, it always contains all the information of the object, and when conjugated by a lens of a camera or the eyeball, produces the same full 3D image. Okay. Now, the Fourier transform formula converts spatial forms to spatial frequencies and vice versa. As all objects are at root vibratory structures, right? That's all we're just vibratory structures. We have frequencies. Different types of lenses can alter the frequency nature of information that is transferred. All of the information contained in some region of space can be represented as a hologram, where all parts reflect the whole on a smaller scale. This is referred to as non-locality. This can also explain why some children retain normal intelligence when large portions of their brain, in some cases even half, are removed. And this is really astounding. I did some research into that. Some people are born with massive amounts of their brain missing, but they function completely normally. Okay, they have no obvious disabilities or defects, even though half the brain might be missing, which clearly means the size of the brain in and of itself is completely irrelevant. Right? It's astounding. It actually happens. It also explains why memory is not lost when the brain is sliced in different cross sections, because the memory form, the gestalt of the memory, totality of it, is distributed across the entire brain. Right? in a network-like structure, a little bit like the internet. The internet was designed by military scientists, I guess, to function even if there was a nuclear war. So the internet would find a way to connect to different servers to each other, and that way keep communications open. Think of the brain in a similar fashion as well, where the totality of the brain holds the information, but fractions or fractal or single slices of the brain also hold the totality of the information, like a hologram. Okay, and the connections are established no matter how hard we try to break them. Okay. Now, memories, like cognitive neuronal functions, such as those produced by Gabor wavelets, are diffused throughout the brain in holographic form. Memories and intelligence can be non-local, where the holonomic brain theory crops up. Space-time patterns are transformed into spectrum-based waveforms to encode amplitudes, frequencies, as well as the relationship among their phases. The holonomic brain can process this type of cognition because it can process holographic wave interference patterns and store information in beams of light. In the lens-defined model of brain function, a sub-definition of the holonomic model, the human sensory system, plays the role of a powerful lens, refocusing and redirecting wave patterns, which are transmitted into a language of light the brain can understand. The question of whether the brain understands this by itself, or that a higher cognitive apparatus understands this holonomically through the brain, is a matter of metaphysical conjecture. So I've always held, so bear with me, I've always held that we, yes, our body is a prison, etc., etc., but even the part that's imprisoned in this body is merely a four-dimensional shadow of a higher dimensional being. Let me put it this way. If you're walking down the street and it's a sunny day, you see your shadow in front of you, if the sun is behind you, for example, right? Now the shadow has roughly the shape of your body, right? I mean, it's got two arms, a head, a body, two legs. You can determine. Maybe you can even see if you got a head, or you might be able to see if there's the shape of your shirt. So it represents your body as a black two-dimensional shape. Right? It's not you, but it represents you, or at least the part of you that's blocking the sun. Is it you? No. Is it related to you? Is there a relationship between you and your shadow? Yes, absolutely. If you did not exist, you could not cast a shadow, so there would be no shadow, so therefore the shadow depends on you. But the shadow is not you. It just has a very intimate relationship with you. It is a consequence of you walking in the sun. Think of your body in the same way. So the body you're occupying right now, think of it as a shadow. Just like a shadow, an actual shadow is the shadow of your body. So just imagine the kind of being you are that would cast a shadow such as the one that you are right now. Now, it doesn't represent your true self, not really. It doesn't, you can't even deduce the true nature of yourself from it. But it is a direct consequence of your actual true self. Right? Okay, so your body is a four-dimensional shadow of your higher dimensional true existence. And also your prison, because your consciousness, part of your consciousness, is trapped here in this body. How? Why? We'll get to. How? I don't know. I don't know how. I do know of a few escapes, which we will talk to, and which also is being discussed right now at the Shiny Set Out, where we're discussing the hypothesis. There's a lot of overlap at the moment between the Shiny Set Out and the cave. Okay, so it's really important that you start thinking those terms about yourself, about life, etc., etc. This life is real. It's real enough, right? This is really the kicker here. Now, a shadow is just as real as you are, right? Could we, understand the nature of a shadow? Do we ever even think about understanding the nature of a shadow? No, we don't. But there it is. It's a real thing. The shadow is there. The sun goes away, the shadow is gone. Oh my goodness, is the shadow dead? Well, no, not really. But it's not there anymore because there's no light to produce a shadow. So you're the same in your four-dimensional body. When I say four-dimensional, of course, I'm talking about the three spatial dimensions as well as the dimension we perceive as time, through which our movement is severely limited, or seemingly so anyway. So it's really something to wrap your mind around that. So just play with that for a bit. So the shadow exists. We exist, and our higher selves as well. Okay. Now let's get back to the holonomic brain theory. Okay. More specifically, sensory systems can be singled out to further apprehend the role of the lens-defined model. Visual images projected in the occipital lobe are a result of the tuning of wave frequencies in cells situated in the primary visual cortex. Preparameter cohorts also evince that such tuning occurs in the somatosensory and motor cortexes. Somatosensory, it's body sensor, right? And motor cortexes. According to Prepram, what the data suggests is there exists in the cortex a multidimensional holographic-like process serving as an attractor or set point toward which muscular contractions operate to achieve a specified environmental result. Memories or prior experiences are stored in holographic-like form and retrieved through cognition, free will, in order to activate the transmutation of thought into reality. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. It's Descartes' point. Well, this is not the entire quote. It's shortened, but let's go with that. Okay. So, in that theory, right, mind creates reality. Mind creates reality. It seems that holonomy in brain function is really achieved at the quantum level. Waveforms embedded and spread throughout the matrix of a neural system allow new patterns to be produced via the transmutation of quantum waves into particles and back again into waves, vice versa, ad infinitum, ad nauseam, forever and ever. The idea of a quantum mind is still debated amongst philosophers and scholars, an ensemble of theories flooding the fore of brain functioning ideology. Notable proponents of various quantum mind theories include Dr. and endocrinologist Deepak Chopra, philosopher David Chalmers, and mathematical physicist Roger Penrose. Holonomic processes are holistic, as their title implies, and can even be considered holographic. They spread patterns everywhere in space and time to entangle the parts with one another. In such a domain of creation, space and time no longer exist, and therefore neither does causality in Aristotelian mindsets. Whoa! Causality, or the death of causality. We're going to talk about that in an upcoming show. We think that if we knock a cup of coffee off the table and it falls and spills and potentially breaks, we've just watched or witnessed a chain of causal events. Now, it seems that's not quite the case. At least some experiments highly question now the causality of reality or of where we are. It seems to us, that each step follows the other in a linear fashion. Hence, I knock the cup, it falls down, it breaks. That's cause and effect. What though if there were no cause and effect? Or they could be reversible or arbitrary, or they exist in totality. What do I mean by that? So when we first started this short discussion around these kinds of thoughts, I shared with you what some of the Aboriginal or First Nations people of the world believe. And the Aboriginals in Australia specifically talk about the dreaming or the dream time. Now, a lot of white folk, well, not just white folk, but non-native Australians, think that to mean a time in the past, like a golden age. The dream time, of only we could go back to it, etc., etc. But that's wrong. It's actually not correct to think of it like that. The dreaming is everywhere. It is forever and always, but not bound by time. And that's the place we can no longer get to. We can no longer get to the dreaming. We are here. We're stuck here in this gross matter prison that is rotting our souls clearly, and with seemingly no escape. Right? And if you lived in a state of everywhere, if you lived in a state of non-linear time, then or no actual perception of a flow of time, if you will, then there would be also no causality. You just exist because you do, right? There is no beginning, end. There's no duration. Things just are. They just are. Only in our limited perception of reality right here do we think that there's a flow of time. There's a beginning and end, even if it's a circular thing, all of these things. But it all suggests a flow, a directional flow. Circular world, like in Eastern philosophy, the linear flow, as in Western philosophy. But that's incorrect, right? If you're trying to glean the true nature of reality, it's not a flow of anything. There's no flow. It's not circular. It's not linear. It's not cyclical. It's not up and down. It's not even reversed. It just is. Our true, this is really hard to understand in our limited iteration, the iteration we inhabit here. It just is. We just are. And to make it a little clearer in our frame of reference, we are all the time. We are all the time. There is no time. But to make us, I guess, to build, let's build a bridge. It's a bridge statement. If you're trying to imagine what everyone is like, think of it. We are all the time. We just are. We are not going to be, and we weren't. We are. So there's no past. There's no future. There's only now. All of the nows. Right? That I know that takes a lot to imagine, but just again, think of the shadow and how it feels when you cast it. Then think of yourself as a shadow cast by a high dimensional entity. Unfortunately, in this particular reality matrix, that shadow is a prison, right? And it's not a light source that casts the shadow per se. It is the source of reality that casts our shadow, this reality, this four-dimensional reality. And it does so in increments. And these increments seem to move in a direction. And again, I don't care if you think it's cyclical or linear, right? They are both illusions. They're both illusions. There is no flow. There is no past or future as defined entities. That's why I think it is possible for people to see the future or see the past, have past life regressions, because they exist, they're accessible now, but only very, very special circumstances, only maybe a very special people, right? In our present form, we can't easily step out of this imagined flow of time, but some can. We know that people had premonitions, have seen the future, right? We also know that people have been regressed in past lives and seen the past, vividly lived the past, right? And I think from our point of view, in our reality, our prison reality here, right? I think it is easier to regress to the past than it is to glean the future. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because from our point of view, as imaginary as it might be, the past has happened. So we have observed it. Therefore, the quantum decoherence has occurred. The future, from our point of view, again, is still a field of probabilities. Therefore, harder to ascertain, harder to identify, and harder to determine which future really is going to come to pass. And we don't have the faculties to understand that all the futures come to pass. And they all happen now. There is no time per se, right? Again, it's a lot to get your mind around. I get that. Now, there's some interesting information I'm going to share with you, and this is around the proof or evidence for a holographic universe. This is from an article in 2013. Using a supercomputer and other calculations, researchers have discovered that there are striking similarities between the unknown laws that govern the universe and the human brain. Could this be more proof of the existence of a holographic universe? The scientists who conducted the study are not saying we are living in a holographic world, but according to the study, the results are not a coincidence. By performing complex supercomputer simulations of the universe and using a variety of other calculations, researchers have now proven that the causal network representing the large-scale structure of space and time in our accelerating universe is a graph that shows remarkable similarity to many complex networks such as the internet, social, or even biological networks. By no means do we claim that the universe is a global brain or computer, said study co-author Dmitry Kryukov at the University of California, San Diego campus. But the discovered equivalence between the growth of the universe and complex networks strongly suggests that unexpectedly similar laws govern the dynamics of these very different complex systems. Kryukov pointed out that it is unlikely that this pattern is a coincidence. Of course, it could be, but the probability of such a coincidence is extremely low, he said. Coincidences in physics are extremely rare and almost never happen. There's always an explanation, which may not be immediately obvious. Who would have guessed that the emergence of our universe's four-dimensional space-time from the quantum vacuum would have anything to do with the growth of the internet? Causality is at the heart of both, so perhaps the similarity Kryukov and his collaborators found is to be expected. Such an explanation could one day lead to a discovery of common fundamental laws whose two different consequences or limiting regimes are the laws of gravity, which is Einstein's equations in general relativity, describing the dynamics of the universe, and some yet unknown equations describing the dynamics of complex networks. And that's what study co-author Marian Borgunya at Spain's Universitat de Barcelona said. Now, The idea that our universe is a hologram has been discussed on several occasions before. Some scientists have even suggested that our creator could be a computer programmer. And not long ago, researchers announced that they will try and determine whether our universe is in fact a giant hologram. If all of this is true, it would mean that what we call reality is nothing more than a hologram, and we're all just computer-generated individuals. I don't think it is quite that. I think it's quite that simple. Something happened in the chat. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and now it's disappeared. Yeah, that seemed like a very, very big post there, comment. That seems like it was a funny-looking thing. Please, I do invite you to come to the chat. It's always fun in there. Some lively discussions. A little bit quiet this morning here, or night for us here in Australia. So I don't think we are computer-generated individuals. I don't think so. I think we are prisoners. And I know this sounds airy-fairy, but we are high-dimensional creatures, and it's a very inelegant way of describing our true nature, but it's the best I can do, given what we know about the nature of reality. Right? We are well beyond capability of what this world allows us to do. We are not native to this. I mean, our bodies certainly are. That's no doubt. But our minds, what makes us us, our essence, is not. It is not. And a lot of the world religions know this. They've told us. And they've also told us that it's very hard to get out. And in fact, if you have any material connections to this place, any chains that bind you to this world, if you're rich and you like being rich, if you like the pleasures that this world has to offer, etc., then your chances of getting out are bupkis, right? And I hate to say this, but it was actually said by the man himself. Easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. Something to think about there, right? And this is really the crux of our dilemma. We are being steered away from the truth at every step of the way, starting with our biological manifestation in this world. We are completely and utterly, for the most part, unaware of what is really going on. Just like Plato's unfortunate cave dwellers, who, unbeknownst to themselves, sit in a cave and watch shadows play out, thinking that is real life, until one of their fellows escapes, discovers the true nature of reality, tries to free his brothers and sisters by returning to the cave and telling them about the real world, and failing miserably because they beat him to death because they so love to watch the cave wall. Does this remind you of anyone? Look at us. We were kept in ignorance for millennia, right? Most of us. Only the few could afford to, learn, study, spend their time, discussing or discovering the nature of the universe. Only a few. No, I have not heard of biogeology, but I'm always interested to learn. Titans in the rocks. Please, if there's something that you have, I would be more than interested. It sounds interesting. It sounds very interesting. So please do send me some information. Is that YouTube that you posted? Sorry, no, it's not YouTube. Ancient Truth Project. Is that it? Is that the biogeology bit? I will read it. Read it. I will have a look. Do that if you give me some information. But I have not heard of it. So here we are, right? Kept in ignorance for millennia, centuries, and on and on. And then as our numbers grew, it became harder and harder to control us individually. It just became harder. Revolutions became more common, rebellions, slave revolts, etc., etc. Haiti, the only successful slave revolt. I'm on A, Stardust Man. the only successful slave revolt in the history, or in modern history, well, actually, even, Spartacus wasn't successful really, was in Haiti, where they kicked out, they even defeated the French army. Did you know that? They defeated the French army, and they're still being punished for it. I think that illustrates better than anything else I could say in the metaphysical world just how this world is run. The Haitians, who successfully claimed their freedom in the revolution, are still being punished to this day for that act of defiance. Okay. Did you ever wonder why so many bad things are happening to Haiti? That's why. They're cursed. They're completely cursed by this world, by this order of things. And that's really a great way to understand our world and how the parasites would like to keep us. And even the originators of this system of things, the great adversary who built this world to imprison us. Or maybe built is the wrong word, manifested it. But then he needs us to continuously manifest it for him. That's what quantum decoherence is. We're constantly manifesting this world for our prison guards, okay? For the people that created this prison, manifested this prison in the first place. It's really quite bizarre if you think about it. Yeah, so ignorance was good, but then ignorance, that, like I said, our numbers grew. We wanted rights. We had ideas and thoughts, and it was harder and harder to control the masses. And then, lo and behold, we had politics, and we had communism and socialism and capitalism and all these other isms, and that would occupy our mind. We would become beholden to money, which is completely and utterly useless. Money allowed for a truly parasitic class to exist, because if there's money, you no longer have to contribute to society. You don't, right? If you've got a whole bunch of money somewhere, you can live your entire life without ever doing anything useful. Your entire life, right? And this is the system of things we're in right now. We have allowed parasites to exist. If you have a barter system, right, or even a simple economic system where everybody has to contribute, then you have to do something. If you're bartering, right, if you're a hunter, then you go hunting, a fisherman or builder, or whatever you do, you're contributing to your society, right? But we don't have to do that anymore. We have allowed for parasites to not contribute at all. Right? This is also a form of control, believe it or not. And all of these things have been designed so that we don't think about the true prison we're in. Right? Or we all were railing against communism and capitalism, and we're railing against politicians and kings and queens, and we chop off the head of noblemen and such. All the while missing the point that all of these things are designed to as the red herrings, to keep us here, to keep our mind away from the true questions. And in history, though, over time, people have asked that question, and people have come up with the answers. The mystery schools, the Knights Templar, the Cathars, the Freemasons, some other secret societies, right, and sects. They came upon the answer. Maybe, who knows how, but they preserve that knowledge. It's knowledge that is jealously guarded. It has to be guarded lest it be destroyed. Very important. Okay. Cometism is fine, Comet. We all love cometism. More cometism. In fact, if we had cometism, we wouldn't need any other isms. But yeah, sorry, I am chatting to the chat room. So like I said, come and join. Not just me, any show. The chat room is free. Just come in, you choose an avatar, off you go. Knock yourself out. But yeah, so and now though, because there's so many of us, they had to come up with new control mechanisms, right? And these control mechanisms were education. We're education, education for the masses now. We educate them. We'll give them books to read, but we decide what's in the books. We decide what is on their mind. all the time. We decided. We will indoctrinate them into what we want them to believe. Okay? Anything that doesn't fit our narrative, will prosecute, ignore, destroy, or otherwise make disappear. Okay? So education, or mass education, became a tool of control. Food became a tool of control, or what we like to call near food experience that we're having now. There's fast food, there's slow food. Like fast food is, McDonald's and like fried chicken means you can walk in the shop, your food is ready as soon as you order it and you walk away. That's fast food. Makes sense, right? Then there's slow food. Slow food is where you sit down in a restaurant or maybe you cook at home and it takes a few hours. Sometimes it takes a day to prepare the food. That's called slow food. And we all know that, right? And then there's near food. Near food is food that is not really food. It comes close to the experience, but it really isn't. If you go to any supermarket and you look at some of the processed foods that you buy, look at the list of ingredients. I bet you my bottom dollar that a large chunk of the stuff that you eat, you don't even know what it is. E color this and that number the other, and glucogen and high fructose corn syrup, and a whole bunch of other things. My suggestion is try to get whole foods, that haven't been messed with. Ideally, non-GMO either. I mean, I'm not a big fan of genetically modified organisms in any shape or form, because we don't know what the consequences are. If you genetically modify anything, right? You don't know what the long-term effects are. Now we know that we've been eating apples and cucumbers and beef for thousands of years, and we know what the effects are pretty much, right? But if you start messing around with genetic material, very hard to even fully comprehend what could happen in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 generations. We just don't know, right? We have no idea. Yeah, so I would suggest that you steer away from your near food experiences, because those chemicals are designed to dull your mind. Yeah, they're designed to dull your mind. That's it. Sorry. It's just not going to do you any favors. Fluoride in the water. What is that meant to do? Well, that's actually insidious. Nazis did it, interestingly. So why did they put fluoride in the water? I think I told you guys the story before. I had this discussion with my dentist. I said, well, fluoride, I said to him, is a topical treatment. He goes, yes. That's why you put, fluoride on your teeth. Yes. So there's no fluoride tablet. I asked him. He goes, no. So my body wouldn't be able to process the fluoride to put it in my teeth, I guess. He goes, no. So then I asked him, so why do they put fluoride in the water? And he looked at me for a little while and he thought, yeah, that's a good point. Now, the theory is that the water that you drink stays in your mouth long enough for the fluoride to have an effect. That's the theory, right? So you drink enough water, there should be enough fluoride sticking to your teeth from the act of drinking, especially if you're gargling, whatever, that there is an effect. And there may be an effect as well, right? But it's not really a great effect unless you drink water all the time and you keep it in your mouth for fairly long periods of time. The key reason why fluoride has been added to the water is so it calcifies your pineal gland. Some interesting studies done on that. Fluoridization of the water affects the pineal gland most of all. Of any organ, of any gland, of any part of your body, the pineal gland is affected the most. And most of us, by the time we're 40, if we have fluoridated water, carry a tooth in the middle of our brain. It's not really a tooth, of course. Okay. It's really important to understand that these things aren't really here to help us. Is there an effect on your teeth? Maybe. So you have nice teeth. Just don't eat so much sugar. You know that the hunter-gatherer societies, the skeletons you find, they had perfect teeth. You know why? Not a lot of sugar. Or if any, for that matter, right? Perfect teeth. That's something we can only aspire to these days. Because of sugar. Sugar is actually, it's probably the greatest poison we ever introduced into our diets. I mean, in moderation, like anything, it's good. Right? And what you don't want is highly processed sugar. Anything white. You shouldn't eat anything that's white. White bread, white flour, white sugar, and white anything. I mean, except maybe for milk. But white anything means it has been bleached, it has been refined, it has been robbed of all its natural goodness. Right? So food is a control mechanism. But now look at us. So we are eating these horrible near food diets. Education is not helping us. It's indoctrinating us from an early age away from things we shouldn't be, we should be looking at, right? But they don't want us to look at them. The true nature of reality, magic, true history of the world, what really is going on with the banking system, etc., etc., etc. All these control mechanisms, they're all self-enforcing, they're self-regulating, they're self-perpetuating control systems, and one breeds the next. And now, if you look at the nature of the world we're in, one of the greatest inventions of all time, television. I'm talking about the technology here. The technology. It's astounding. Literally, it means far sight or far seeing. Television is great. Far vision, seeing. You're seeing things that are happening, thousands of kilometers away from you, or they're recordings from things in the past, etc., etc. An astounding technology. What do we use it for? Reality TV shows. Reality TV shows. There's a show now, and I had discussed this with Dave the other day. Another friend of mine. Hey James, hi buddy, if you're listening. It's a show that has people watching TV. So the show is you watching people that are watching TV. It's enormously popular. And this is my Hitchhiker's Guide moment. In the Hitchhiker's Guide, Douglas Adams, first a radio show and then it was a book series, wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and in it there's a man who decides he wants to move out of the asylum. So he believes that the world we live in has become an asylum filled with insane people. And that moment happened for him when he found instructions on a box of matches. How to light a match. He decided, okay, I'm going to turn my house inside out and I'm going to live on the outside of the asylum. For me, the moment came. I haven't turned my house inside out. But in my mind, that moment for me came when we have a show that is all about watching people watching TV. What is that? I mean, the Kardashians are bad enough. But I get it. Voyeurism, we like to see how other people live. They're rich. We want to be rich. I get it. But what possible enjoyment or what need is being filled by people watching other people watching TV? Comet, I'd love to beam me up, mate. By the way, there's an interesting discussion in the chat room around vitamins or vitamins. Vitamins are, you know what they're good for? Turning your pee fluoride color. That's what they're good for. Vitamins do nothing for you. Eat fruit, believe people. Fruit and vegetables. Eat fruit and vegetables. They're loaded with vitamins. Okay? Loaded. No pills necessary. No pills necessary. Have a normal, like if you want to live in this world and be healthy, which I think this is everybody's aspiration. I mean, the aspiration should be to escape, but I get it. We want to be healthy and live in this world. Don't take any supplements. Well, sorry. The second thing they achieve is they make a lot of money for people that make these vitamins. Right? It's really funny when you look at all these supplements that are in existence. People take them. Oh, I gotta take my vitamins. Oh yeah, that'll. No, eat fruit and veggies. Organic, if you can. Stay away from the chemicals and no GMO stuff, please. You know what, America? I'm not picking on America, but America was sending a whole bunch of food to Africa, right, to these poor, starving nations. The only problem was they were GMO crops. couldn't sell in their own country. So the Africans said, no, thank you very much. We don't want it. How about that? People are starving. I don't want your GMO stuff. Not putting that in my body, thank you. Very interesting, right? Very, very interesting. Now, the next control mechanism is really us, our laziness, the internet, our willingness to completely, I don't know, log off from life and log into a virtual reality. And then finally, what's been happening for the last couple of years is the icing on the cake. During the pandemic and the ensuing lockdowns, were these lockdowns necessary? I don't know. Hey, this is music, guys. Mitchell Bob is going to be up next with the greatest hee-haw in the business. Donate if you can and come back on Thursday for another episode of The Cave. Goodbye.